There's great stories in this business.
Yeah.
And I think especially for what you do, you're in the transaction side of the business. Most of the people that I meet, that I talk to for this podcast, and most of the people that are our clients, our clients are attorneys, but our clients are also principals often, right? And most of the people that I've interviewed for the podcast so far have been principals, people who are buying real estate. They're a professional buyer of real estate. This is a little bit different because my business and what we do day to day and running our company, we're a title company, we are in the transaction business. And you're an attorney and you're in the transaction business. So we're kind of adjacent to one another, right?
Yes.
We're not exactly the same what we do,
Right.
but we're very much adjacent in that we get to see tons of deals. We're not necessarily the buyers or the sellers of them, although maybe sometimes on the side I've been, and maybe you have been too, but we're in the transaction side of the business. So talk about great stories. Right. And that's what I wanted to, that's what we're trying to do with this podcast is really find some of those fun stories and also find some really super interesting people that have different niches in the industry that, what they buy or what they do or some interesting thing they've developed or built over the years or whatever it is. And I'm sure you've seen it all, right?
I've seen a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen a lot. So first of all, I jumped right in, and I like to do that. I'd like to jump right in. But Tina, introduce yourself. What's your firm? What's your specialty? Tell me a little bit about you to start.
Okay, sure. My firm is DL Partners. I've been with them 27 years now, going on 28. We're a real estate law firm. We mostly represent a lot of developers, but we can handle everything surrounding real estate, whether it's the acquisition, the financing, the offering plan at the Attorney General's office, the selling of the condos at the end of the day. And we have litigators as well, because I usually need them and I have to call them sometimes and say, I need your help. And we have a new partner with us who joined last year, and she does a lot of tax incentive and tax abatement work. And that's really rolling again in the city. So that's a great addition to our team.
Yeah.
We're a small firm here in the city. It's about 20 of us total.
Everything New York, everything Manhattan.
Everything is New York.
Too.
I've got a bunch of plans in Brooklyn. Mostly the city, though, is really where they are, but some in Brooklyn as well. Right now, I've got a couple of big projects I'm still in the middle of. On 22nd Street, it's almost 200 condos. Gorgeous, gorgeous property. We represent the developer. And I've got one on East 34th Street. That's also about 200 units. I have another one, East 47th Street. That's over 100 units. So I've got some big projects.
Yeah.
And then we also represent some smaller buildings, anywhere from, 3 to 100. Clients run the gamut.
Got it. And so these are developers building mostly condos?
Mostly condos. Most are residential.
Yeah.
Some of them will have a commercial space on the bottom, retail on the ground floor.
Does anyone build co-ops anymore?
No. Oh, please. But I have clients who buy and sell co-ops.
Yeah.
It's not. I prefer the condos.
We just mentioned this. I had another episode here with a gentleman named Miles Horn. It's literally what he does is buy and sell co-ops and condos and other things, but it's primarily what he does. And those in New York pretty much know, but for those that are outside of New York, so we have a lot of people that are, and outside of New York, the co-op structure it exists, but it's not very common at all.
Right.
You're not really buying real estate. You're buying a membership interest in an LLC or ownership shares.
You're buying stock. You're buying shares in a corporation. That's what you're buying.
Yeah.
And the proprietary lease is for your apartment.
Right.
So that's what you're getting. You're actually getting stock in the corporation.
You own a percentage of one company. And just like any other company, if somebody wanted to buy stock in my company, I have a private company, I'm allowed to decide if I want that person to be my shareholder based on no reason at all, personality or whatever.
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? Your co-op sale has to be approved by the board.
Right.
They have the right to meet the purchaser. Yeah. I've had clients tell me they had to bring their dogs to the interview. They had to meet the dog, make sure the dog is okay. And they can deny you for no reason. Now, I'm practicing over 25 years now, and I've only had 2 clients denied.
Really?
One was buying and one was selling.
That's stunning because you hear about
it's unbelievable.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was very surprised in those 2 scenarios because both my clients were lovely. I don't know about the purchaser who was denied, but the board doesn't have to tell you any reason.
Right.
So the co-ops are a little different. They're a little different. And I have a lot of clients who come from California and also buy here, and they want to put everything in their trust.
Right.
They're like, oh, well, that's how we own everything in California. And I'm like, oh, well, you're buying a co-op. I better see if this corporation will allow you to own your stock in the trust.
I mean, it depends.
So in the course of my career, I've seen it getting easier. I've seen it changing. I've seen it getting easier.
Right.
And I have been able to do it a few times, but some still say no.
There's still a ton of co-ops in New York. Do you see them? I don't know if they can, if this is feasible, changing or converting to condo and kind of going away, or not really?
I don't think so.
What's out there is out there.
Yeah, some of them, they're so old school. They've been here forever. I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah.
And my world really is mostly the new condo development.
Right.
That's really my world.
Okay. So tell us about some of the new condo developments. Tell us about some of your developers. Give us a feel for whatever. Let's talk about marketplace. Go ahead. You have some ideas.
Well, the market is, I hope, coming back right now.
That's what everyone says, which is code for it sucks, and that's okay.
But look, I have to say, this week I closed the first 2 units at one of my new buildings, so it's always exciting to get those first 2 closed.
It's a big deal.
Developers been working on a project for years, right? Mm-hmm. This is years in the making.
Yeah.
They come to us when they're acquiring it. We take out the construction loan. Then we need 6 months to a year to draft this offering plan and get it accepted.
Yeah.
And the brokers need time to market and sell. And you got to meet all the attorney general prerequisites before you can actually have a closing. And in the meantime, they're building a building.
Yep.
And they have to get through the New York City Department of Buildings. And it's not easy to build in New York.
Yeah.
It's not. And so my hats off to my developers. It's stressful, that's for sure. Got a couple of first unit closings done this week, which is super exciting. And I have a bunch of large projects that, just keep on going. I was retained by a big developer here in Manhattan, and we're going to start their project. Projected to be ready in about 2 years. Mm-hmm. That'll be about 75 condos. Okay. So guys are looking forward.
Yeah.
Right? Which is great, which is what we always want. I have my buildings right now where I'm signing contracts. They'll be ready at the end of this year. Right. I have my buildings where I'm closing. And I really want to see us drafting those offering plans for the buildings that are going to be, coming to market in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's always what you want. You want that pipeline going.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see that more and more. I mean, today my partner is sending out a retainer for a 100-unit condo.
I'm sure you can put your finger on the pulse. You just get an instinct of like, are they pulling back? Are they leaning in? It sounds
exactly.
Like
and 2024 was steady for us, but I didn't see the new stuff coming in. Uh-huh. And now I see the new stuff coming in already this early in the year. Right. So I think it's great.
That's interesting. Yeah, you have to have a ton of, I've said, like patience and perseverance. I used to love, as a developer I'm talking about, I have a weird person. I'm attracted to starting things and but starting anything, especially a real estate development project, it's very unique. Like there's zero revenue for years until you actually start, and then it's all revenue, right?
Well, not until you start closings. Right. Which is years down the road. Yeah. Which is where the pressure comes in on me and my team. Mm-hmm. Now I've gotten to know my developer and their small group who are working on this project, right? Yeah. And I'm working with them for 3 to 5 years. And now we're at the moment where we could start to close. Right. And they're like, Tina, there's so much pressure on us. All of our investors are calling us. We have a mortgage to pay off. If I can close all the units in a day, they would want me to. Yeah. Maybe 5 in a day we can handle. I think we've done up to 8, Yeah. But they want us. They want to see it.
That, we know what this is going to be. We know what this project is going to look like when we embark on it. We know it's going to take 2, maybe even 3 years before you get to the point where revenue's coming in the door. You've got to live with that. You've got to, live on borrowed and or invested money for that entire time. It's a ton of pressure, but yet every single time a person does it, no matter who they are, it never, you feel like you'd be mentally prepared for that, but you never are. The stress still feels the same. It's still the same thing.
Yeah. I remember a while ago, I was maybe halfway through my career at this point, and I had a couple of young guys, and they came in and they were doing an offering plan, and they thought, oh, great, I can be a New York City developer, right? This is so easy. I can do this. Right. They literally would call me and say, Tina, I'm not sleeping at night. Yeah. I don't have the stomach for this. I'm never doing this again. Right. And we finished that project, and then that was it for them. Yeah, it takes a certain personality to do it.
I think certain personality is attracted. I think people's personalities are attracted to their profession, right? I think people find their way in whatever, profession that they find their way into because their personality fits that thing, and then it just subconsciously they get attracted to that. So I think the real estate developer is someone who has a high tolerance for they whether they show it or not. They may show it, they may look like they're stressed, but they have a high tolerance for stress.
Yes.
For that.
No, I totally get that. I mean, I consider myself a deal maker. Yeah. I love the title of your podcast, Deals Gone Wild. Yeah. I love it. It's hilarious. For me, I consider myself a deal maker. I like being in the transactions, whether it's negotiating the contracts for my developers and getting them closed, Or it's all my individual clients who are referred to me, in random ways, who say, oh, I'm buying or selling and I was referred to you. Can you help me out? And I love making the deals. But some of them do go wild, go a little off the rails.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Let's talk about that a little bit. And to that point also, that your personality, you find your way into whatever profession your personality. I find that people in our business, and I say yours and mine, right? You're an attorney and you're a transactional attorney effectively, and we're in the transaction business. We're again, adjacent on the other side with you or with you, or hand in hand pretty much as a title company. I find that people in our industry are attracted to a little bit of chaos, a little bit of high frequency, right? I think it's a similar personality to people that are, work in the restaurant service industries.
Yes.
Because, right? You like it. You like the high frequency, the fast movement. You call it chaos. That's not really fair. It may not be actual chaos. It's organized.
Very energetic.
Yeah, but there's a high level of energy is the word.
I have two speeds, fast and faster. Right. That's all I can go at.
Right.
I'm always going a million miles an hour because you're juggling so much, right? And New York City real estate moves fast.
Yeah.
You get a deal sheet, you got to do a contract because time does kill deals.
Yep.
It really does.
Yeah.
And for your developer, you never want to be like, oh my gosh, the buyer found something else, right? Because you were taking too long to do the contract or negotiate the contract.
Yeah.
Or if you're representing a buyer who's buying something, you never want, somebody else comes in and makes a higher offer to the seller and your client loses out, You have to be fast. It's definitely a high energy business.
That is the old adage, the old thing, time kills deals. That is one of the most simple and true things. I'm going to title this episode, Time Kills Deals, because it's so true.
It does. Yeah. Okay, so I have one deal that did not go well for my clients, and I was pretty upset over it at the end. It was really a shame, and I really thought we were going to make this happen. So I get this call one night. Mm-hmm. I'm in my office, and on my phone comes a very large international law firm here in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And I literally think to myself, who is calling me from that firm? I'm not in the same space as this firm, right? I answer the phone. Gentleman introduces himself. He turns out he's best friends with one of my developers. Okay. And I was like, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. Okay. And he goes, yeah. And I called my best buddy and I said, look, I haven't bought something in Manhattan in 20 years. If you were going to buy something, who would you call? And so my developer says, I would call Tina. Uh-huh. So he calls me up and now I'm representing him and his wife and they're buying, I forget what it was, I don't know, 8 to 10 million, in that range, condo in a very iconic building here in New York, very well known. And it's had a storied history itself, the building itself. And so, okay, great, happy to do it. Start my due diligence, we get the contract, we're negotiating it. And I find an open permit from 7-8 years ago. And this was a couple years ago, this deal. 7-8 years ago, there's still an open permit, which is odd, right? Could have fallen through the cracks. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Or it could mean there's a problem.
Right.
So I actually told my client to do an inspection of the condo, which is unusual here in the city. We usually don't because you're buying what's inside the four walls. Right? And especially if you're in a building that has 100 units, your percentage of the common elements, right, of the facade, of all the common elements is very small.
But you're inspecting, you're reading the condo declarations documents for them, I presume, right?
Yes, that's all part of my due diligence.
You're saying most people buy a condo and they don't do inspection of the interior either.
Yeah, a physical inspection.
I'm surprised to hear that.
But meanwhile, if my clients are buying a house in Westchester or a two-family in Brooklyn, I'll say, have it inspected before we sign the contract.
Roof, or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even my clients who buy in small buildings in the city. I've had a couple of clients, they're buying the penthouse of a 6-unit co-op. Mm-hmm. Your percentage of that building is 30%.
Right.
If you need capital improvements, you have a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
You should know the condition, right?
Yeah.
So do your inspections.
Yeah.
But for most, they don't. But in this one, we knew that the seller had done some massive renovations and we have this open permit. So I said, do the inspection. They do the inspection. The inspector tells my clients, so there's this bathroom here that they added, and I don't see any exhaust. I don't see any vent, nothing.
No window,
nothing. So it's okay, well, that could be a little bit of a problem, and it's all connected to those open permits.
Bathroom, obviously. Yeah.
And so I said to my client, he's a lawyer. I think she was an author. They're not in the construction business. Now, some of my developers might have said, easy, Tina, no problem. Yeah. I'll take care of it, right? But these guys were like, you know what? I would like the seller to get that closed out before we close. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. That's reasonable, right? So, and the seller had a tenant. So we couldn't close for many months anyway until the tenant vacated.
Okay.
So they still had like 2-3 months.
Yeah.
So we were negotiating the contract. And I said, look, I have to have an outside date, right? I'll give you so long to get that permit closed. And I had very flexible clients. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to sell their apartment to buy this one. They weren't desperate for a place to move, to live, right? They had no pressure. They were like the perfect buyer for this condo. Right. And they were so in love with it. And I was like, okay, flexible. My client was like, I'll give you, 60 days, 90 days. I get him to 120 days or longer. And during the course of the negotiation, he's saying to me, like, Tina, this is what I do for a living. And you got me to move, And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go me. So I get him to move. The seller comes back with, I'll put $50,000 in escrow, but if I don't have the permit signed off by a such date, you could have the $50,000, deal with it yourself.
Right.
And we're like, no, that's not what we're willing to agree to. So we finally they asked for even more time, the seller. So we said, fine, we have no pressure.
Any idea what their plan is and how they're working on getting this permit removed?
No idea, except the attorney on the other side actually was yelling at me at various points and yelling at my client's broker at various points. And at one point, the seller's attorney was like, oh, big deal. I could put that exhaust fan in myself. That takes 5 minutes.
Great.
I was like, great. Go do it. Go do it.
Let me know when it's ready.
Get the permit signed off, and we're happy to close. But this permit was 7 years old at that point already. They were just yelling at us, and they weren't being very reasonable or cooperative. And I thought I had come up with a really good solution because I'm here to make deals. Yeah. Right? They want to sell. My client wants to buy. Let's figure it out, And I thought we came up with some really reasonable terms, and they agreed. And so my client signed the contract, and we wired the money. So we wired the deposit, 10% on an $8 million apartment. Okay. We wired the deposit.
To the
seller's attorney. Okay. Because they're the escrow agent. Uh-huh. And then all of a sudden they call like, no, we changed our minds, $50,000. And they went back to their original offer position. Right. We had been doing this now for 2 months at least.
And negotiated past that.
We had negotiated past it. I thought we were settled. They said no. Right. And they're going back to their original. And my client was like, no, I don't want your $50,000. Right. I don't want this open permit. I just want it all done right. And then I'm happy to buy your apartment. When you're ready, I'm happy to close on 10 days notice. Like whatever you want, we'll close then. And they wired us back the money. They wired us back the deposit and said no. So I've been tracking that apartment. Yeah. So this fan that she could have put in 15 minutes, herself, they got it signed off 18 months later.
Okay. So they did ultimately doable.
They did. Yes.
If it's doable, what I'm thinking is you're telling me the story is it's an interior bathroom. There's nowhere to vent to.
Right.
So there's no solution. You have to rip the whole thing out, move it somewhere else, or kill the bathroom, which is going to cost more than $50,000 and be like a whole disruptive situation. And that's why this is never going to happen. But you told me ultimately that, but you don't know what they
I don't know what they did.
Yeah. Who knows maybe they did have to do that.
Who knows? I don't know. Maybe there was a way, to vent it. I don't know. Yeah. But they eventually got it done. It was 18 months later. Right. So I was sorry to see that the deal did not go through. Yeah. I don't have too many of those in my career where the deal does not go through. Yeah. And my clients really wanted it. But you know what? Even 18 months might have been too long for them to wait. That's a long time to wait. And your money is tied up.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You're losing the loss of that money that it's not making money for him. It's sitting in an escrow account. Mm-hmm. And also you're losing all that opportunity because who knows what other units will come on the market, especially in that building that they wanted. It's a very large building. Mm-hmm. So another unit could have come up that they would have missed.
It's 18 months, right? You could you tell me you can't find another place that you love in 18 months?
Right, exactly.
If you're really trying.
Yeah. So that was one of my deals that did not move forward that I was a little upset about. And I thought I did a good job negotiating it.
Right. Tell me about one that did move forward, that finally got to it worked. Things worked out, but it wasn't so easy or such a straight line to get there.
This one worked out for my client who wanted out of a contract.
Okay.
And I got her there. So this was back in the 07, 08, 09 years, right? Lehman's going bankrupt
the
world's collapsing and everybody in New York wanted out of their real estate contracts, right? So a year in advance, so a year before all of this happened, this woman calls me and says, hey, you were referred to me. Me and my husband are looking to buy a condo in a new development project. Would you represent us? And they were interviewing a bunch of lawyers, which people do, which is great. You know, a lot of it is, this is personal service, right? You have to connect with the person who's going to represent you and also be willing to pay my fee, right? I'm not cheap. I'm not the most expensive, but you have to be willing, you know, to pay the fee also. And so they decided to go with another lawyer. And over a year later, they call me back. They're like, oh, I don't know if you'll remember us, but we had called you. We didn't use you, but we're in contract now, and we would like the right to cancel. And we want out. And we asked our attorney, do we have the right to cancel this contract? Now, it's over a year since we signed our contract. Do we have the right to cancel and get out? And our attorney said no. And she said, would you look at this for us? I said, of course I will. Sure. Okay. Now, remember, I represent developers.
Right.
So I know the Attorney General regulations that the developer is obligated to meet.
Consumer friendly. Yeah.
So I look at everything. Now, I'm a developer's counsel. So I call her up and I say, you have the right to cancel. Her deposit was over $500,000. That's $500,000 that she wants back, right? This is real money. So I said to her, you have the right to cancel. I can see it. So I said, but I don't want to be the one that blows up this whole building, right? Because the minute I tell the Attorney General that developer has to give everyone in contract the right to cancel, and now it's, say, 2008, 2009, I think at this point, you know everyone will jump on the opportunity to cancel because they'll want to retrade. They'll want to renegotiate those purchase prices or just grab their money back, right? Because they've lost so much.
Collapse the whole project.
Yeah. And so I didn't want to be known as that attorney.
In the world that you live, which they're your clients.
Exactly, exactly. And so I said to my clients, I said, would you be willing to sign a confidentiality? Can I call the sponsor's attorney and say, this is what I see.
Dangle it over their head.
Let my client out. And then I won't represent anyone else who calls me about this building. My client won't talk about it. And my client said, fine. Yeah. So I left messages, and nobody's calling me back. It's a big law firm. No one's calling me back. I don't make idle threats. And I don't let my clients tell me to make idle threats. Yeah. I always say to my clients, if this is the position you're taking and this is the ultimatum you want me to throw down, be prepared to follow through. Or I'm not doing this, right? So I leave a message and I said, this will be the last time I call your law firm. My next phone call, if I don't hear from you by tomorrow, will be to the Attorney General's office. Right. I called the Attorney General's office. I spoke to whoever, had answered the phone, and they said, oh, send this to me in writing. I told them the facts. Send this to me in writing. I see who the reviewer is down at the AG's office. I'll put it in front of him. We'll investigate it. We'll look into it. She calls me back. Tina, the sponsor has to give the right to cancel. Right. So we're contacting the sponsor's attorney now. We're telling them, put a right of rescission amendment in front of us and send it to every buyer.
Now they have to send it to everybody.
Every buyer.
Right.
And every buyer.
They never did that in the beginning? I mean, they're obligated to do that in the first place, correct?
So, no, because they were taking the position that they had met all their obligations. So it gets a little tricky. Yeah. So one of the obligations for the sponsor is you have to have a temporary certificate of occupancy for your first unit closing, because we close on temporary COs here in the city, right? I have a tower that's 32 stories. I could start selling and closing the first, say, 10. My developer gets the TCO for the first 10 units. I can close while he's working upstairs. And then he goes back to the DOB. Right. Now I'm applying for floors 10 to 15. The final CO
is only when the building is done, like the whole thing. Okay.
Yes, everything, even the amenities,
Got it.
Which a lot of my developers will do last.
Yep.
And under the regs, the sponsor has 2 years from the first closing to get their final. Oh. And a lot of times, the TCOs are good for 90 days. Yeah. So a lot of times they just keep getting them renewed, especially in the larger projects, right? And you go for a couple of floors at a time, because then you can start closing, start paying down the mortgage, right? So you have to have a TCO before you can close your first unit. And
on at least one unit.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all you have to do is close one within the first year that you projected your first year of operation. Whatever you projected that to be, you have 1 year. You have that year to close one unit, any unit. Okay. But it has to have a TCO.
Right.
So they closed a unit. They filed their amendment at the AG's office saying, oh, we closed our first unit, right? That TCO came in after. So that buyer chose to waive the requirement of a TCO. Fine. that buyer can do so. I had a buyer one year who waived it because they had a 1031 exchange that they were doing, and they had time issues, right? They had deadlines.
Yep.
So we went to the Attorney General's office and said, look, you guys are here to protect buyers.
Right.
I have a buyer who they're running up against their 1031 deadline. As the sponsor's attorney, I won't count this as my first closing, but can they close even though I don't have it? And they gave us their permission. We had to sign this escrow agreement.
Yeah.
I was allowed to pay down the mortgage so I could release the unit, but no one else was able to get paid.
I'm actually surprised and impressed that they allowed that to happen.
Yes,
honestly.
and it made sense, right?
Makes
It
perfect
actually
sense.
was reasonable.
Often these things don't make sense with AGs or just government agencies in general.
Exactly. And they really protected the buyer there because the 1031 deadlines are that's it.
And
It's
you're
a
out,
hard
and you owe
deadline and
tax,
that's it.
Yeah.
So going back to this one, so they closed their unit, but they didn't have the TCO in place. And they counted that as their first. They didn't tell anyone.
Right.
But I saw the dates because I looked at everything, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, they have their TCO, but this is the date. And this is the date they first closed their first unit. So they can't count that as their first unit.
Right.
The TCO came in after the expiration of their first year of operation.
Right.
And so technically they had to give everyone the right to rescind. Oops. And they did. And my client got her money back. So there was one that worked out for my client.
How many others exercised their right
So
to
I
rescind?
didn't represent anyone else in that building, but from what I understand, they all walked away. And then that building came back many, many, many years later.
Yeah.
That building came back because that was like 2009.
Did it kill the project?
For a short time, and then it came back.
Right.
And then it came back.
They shouldn't have avoided you. They were avoiding because they knew. But at the same time, if they'd answered the phone in the first place,
Yes.
You don't care about what they, you
I don't.
just wanted to protect your buyer and get their money back. That's all you cared about.
Exactly.
Would have been easy. Would have said, okay, look, good, let's keep it quiet. Just
Yes.
and then we'll walk on.
Yes.
Wow.
And that would have been it. So that worked out for my client.
Yeah. Good for that's which is what matters for you.
Right. Exactly.
Good,
exactly.
Yeah. It's a crazy business. What else do you see out there in the marketplace today in terms of you represent a lot of developers? You represent a lot of individual buyers and sellers also?
I represent a lot of high profile, high net worth individuals, and I feel like they're always buying and selling,
Sure.
Always buying and selling. So just this week, I was asked to represent someone who's in California. They were in New York, one of my celebrity clients. Now they're coming back, buying a house up in the suburbs, So I see that a lot. I have a young couple who's just about getting married in the next few months, and they're going to buy a 2-family in Brooklyn, which I love, right? How smart is that?
Yeah.
They have the investment unit,
Yeah.
starting off their life. The property will generate a little income for them while they live upstairs.
Right.
So I see that. I have a client off market last week, sold her condo for $16.5 million, and she sold her parking to someone else for 1.5.
For 1.5? Is that what you said? For
Parking.
one space?
One space.
One parking space for 1.5
Yes,
million.
from what I hear, it was a record price
Wow.
for the building.
That's a number.
And I did it in 24 hours.
Holy cow.
I did it in 24 hours. So that's a deal that really worked out for my clients. And that was crazy time pressure, not on me, but also on the parking unit buyer's attorney. So here's a funny one. So I'm representing this woman. She's selling the condo, right? In this building, it's a condominium. And if you buy your parking unit or your storage unit, you can only buy those if you own a residential apartment.
Right.
Makes
Usually
sense,
the
right? You
case.
don't want other people coming into your building.
Right.
You want unit owners.
And that's condo specific. It's in their docs. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's how they set it up. And
Yes.
it's usually how it is.
It's very usual.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense, right? So that's
Sure.
how this is set up. But her buyer at 16.5 only wanted the residential unit and the storage unit, did not want her parking. So now the brokers have to go find another buyer for the parking.
And
so
the condo's willing to allow that?
Oh, yes, because you can sell your parking. You don't even have to sell your residential apartment. Let's say right now you decide to get rid of your car, you're not using it, you don't want it, but you still want to keep your residential apartment. If any one of your neighbors wants parking, you could sell it to them.
Right. Sell it, not just rent
Yes,
it, but sell it.
sell it. It's
Okay.
a license agreement for
Got it.
parking and storage.
Right.
So you buy it, you have
With
the
an
exclusive
easement,
use of it,
essentially?
but you have to live in the building.
Yeah.
So they actually find a buyer for parking. And we're about now to sign the residential unit. And the parking buyer, who's someone who lives in the building, says, no thanks. I think I'm overpaying. I'll offer you, say, 1.2 or whatever he offered. I don't remember. But he offers less. And my client's like, no. And her brokers were like, okay, we're going to scramble. We're going to find someone. Yeah. They find someone. It's now a Thursday at 3:00, and the residential unit owner signs and wires me $1,650,000 for the deposit. Mm-hmm. They want that signed contract back.
Right.
I can't tell them I have to hold it. I have to stall because I have to sell this parking space now to someone new.
Right.
So Thursday morning, I get a phone call from someone saying, Tina, I'm buying a parking space. Can you represent me? It has to be done immediately. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm representing the seller. I was like, this cannot be happening in two places.
It was actually the same space?
It was the same parking space.
Get out of here.
So I'm on the phone with my client and I was like, you're never going to believe this, but the buyer just asked me to represent them. I'm like, I can't. She's cracking up. She's like, oh my God, I wish you could represent us both. I'm like, no. Talk about a conflict of interest, right? You cannot be on both sides of a real estate transaction.
As an attorney, which is not the case for realtors, which is wild. But
but for attorneys, you cannot. Right. So I was like, okay, we need to find them a new attorney. Yeah. They'll find someone new quick. I'll explain it to them. So those...
Were you able to refer to somebody that you knew would get it done quickly?
So they were able to find someone very quickly. And it turns out the people buying the parking, I've already represented them when they bought the residential in that same building, which is why they called me. They already own there and they already have a parking space. They want another one. Right. So it's 3:00 on Thursday. We send the contract for the parking to the new attorney and he's traveling. He's out of the country. So the brokers tell him this has to be signed and wired tomorrow. Like that's it. End of business Friday. We have to wrap up both contracts. Yeah. This cannot go into a weekend, right? Yeah. And so he emails me alone. He's like, Tina, the broker said this has to be done by tomorrow. Is that really correct? And I was like, it is. I am so sorry. I was like, are you free for a call? I know you're on vacation and I'm so sorry. Right. But I can walk you through this very quickly in the realm of small worlds. I've also represented your clients. Right. I was conflicted out here. Let me bring you up to speed. Yeah. And he did what he needed to do, and I got him the document, and he turned around a red line that night, and then his partner took over on Friday because then he was going to be on a flight from like noon to 6. Of course, it always happens that way. Right. And so we got it signed and wired, and I just kept stalling on the residential. Yeah. And I knew that attorney, and I was like, I'm so sorry. It's on me. Oh, they asked me to change their address in the contract. Oh, I had to make this revision. I'm so sorry. It's on me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm busy. I didn't get to that, send it out via DocuSign yet. And so then I was ready, and Friday by 3:00, I had both fully signed up.
That's about as fast as turnaround gets for anything.
Yes. And that was totally off market.
And $1.5 million for a parking space. I don't care where it is. That's wild.
Is that wild?
Can you pitch a tent on this parking space and live there?
Okay, so I've seen it. It's gorgeous.
At the parking space?
The parking garage.
How beautiful could it be? The garage,
it's gorgeous.
There's a chandelier in that garage, isn't there?
The parking garage is gorgeous.
Spotless.
It is.
Off the floor.
It's spotless. You can eat off the floor. It's got all the beautiful subway tiles. It's really beautiful.
Does it come with a washer car?
No, it does not. Wow. It comes with privacy and your own parking space.
Right. That's very nice, but I don't know.
So those deals worked out well for my clients.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. So. It sounds like they work out more than they don't work out, but it never feels like it does feel, it's going to work out. But these things for us too, it gets, there's a lot of variables in real estate transactions.
Yes. And a lot of times it's the personalities.
Yeah.
Like, you started off talking about that. That's what it's about a lot of times, and like when my clients are calling me, I'm always like, look, I don't know how this is going to go because I don't know who's going to be on the other side of me. Right? No matter who it is, even if it's your construction lender. Like, you just don't know. Some construction lenders can be a little more reasonable, can work with me, when we're hitting the bumps. Yeah. And others are very strict. These are the terms. That's it. There's no deviating. So it all depends on the personalities.
There's also a lot of cooks in the kitchen in this business, right? I think in the real estate transaction business, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You're dealing with anywhere from 6 to 12 parties, right, to a transaction often.
Yes. I mean, I guess for me, I try to keep it just between me and the seller's attorney. Mm-hmm. And then I use the brokers where I think it's appropriate. Because some things it's better if they hear things from the brokers as opposed to us. And like with my new developments. So one thing I started when I was a young associate was I felt like people didn't know me, right? And here I am. I'm a small law firm representing developers, and we represent developers that the large law firms represent. And they're used to working with those large law firms, right? And so I found early on, some of them were a little abrasive because they didn't know me.
Right.
And so I started having this like kickoff sales meeting, and I would invite whatever the broker team was going to be on that project. Usually it's 2 or 3 exclusive sales agents, plus my developer, plus my team. And I'd have a sit down and I'd be like, hey guys, this is me. This is who I am, right? Let's get to know each other because we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Like I need you guys. I know when someone's stalling and I need to pull you in when they do.
Right.
I know when an attorney is trying to renegotiate the business terms and my developers want to stop that in its tracks. So I'm going to pull you guys in.
Yep.
And we're all on the same team here. We all want that end result is to get this building closed successfully, right? And so I read the offering plan for them. I have my notes. I tell them the things I think they should be telling buyers.
Yep.
Because some things, it'll be easier to hear it from the sales agent. And then when your attorney tells you, it's like, oh, yes, I already knew that.
Right.
No one's hiding anything.
Right.
Oh, you have lot line windows in your unit, like that's not a surprise when you just put down, right? You just made this huge offer, right? The biggest asset you're probably going to buy in your lifetime.
Right.
And then you get hit with other terms from your lawyer. It's better to hear it from the sales agents.
Yeah.
And so, I chat with them, and I find that really breaks the ice a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like anything, but you have to humanize yourself and you have to build trust. At the end of the day, whatever it is, whether on the other side of the table or on your side of the table, people will make up stories about, if they don't know you and you haven't established trust with people, they'll make up stories about what your motivation is. I think the assumption is often, especially in a deal like this, the assumption is often that, I don't know this person, your dukes are up a little bit.
Right, exactly. And especially in the developer world, they tend to have a bad reputation.
Yeah.
And by association,
right.
I think we kind of do, because people just think, oh, you're a developer's attorney, so you must be very tough. And, and I try to be reasonable.
Yeah.
Look, my husband and I have bought and sold homes. I know what it feels like to be that first-time home buyer. Yep. I know what it feels like to be a little bit more experienced, and a lot of these people, they're very successful in their own worlds, but when it comes to their residential real estate, it's very emotional for them. So I try to be respectful and mindful of everyone's feelings. But at the end of the day, I have to get the best deal for my clients.
Yeah, no, of course. But you have to find a way to break that trust, whether it's the same thing. And in dealing with attorneys, with the lenders, you've got to break through that trust and let them know, like, you're competent, you're on their side, you're trying to get this done well. And sometimes it's easy to do that. Sometimes it's not. It's a heck of a lot easier doing the way that you suggested. If you're able to sit down with them and have face-to-face, get any kind of FaceTime, and put the cards on the table, that's going to go a long way.
Yes. So before COVID, I always did in the office, come on in. And most of my developers I've worked with for like over 20 years now at this point, project after project after project. Yeah. So I know them. I've been to my clients' wives' 50th birthday parties. I've been to their kids' bar mitzvahs. Right. They all sent gifts to my house when I had my son 15 years ago, right. So, you get to know them as, real people.
Yeah, you become friends in your circle.
So they would all come in, meet, and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, it helps a ton. No, that's great.
And then it's funny. And then on my residential deals, I usually never even meet my clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes at the closing and sometimes never. Yeah. Because some of my clients are so busy. They're like, oh, Tina, could you close by power of attorney for us?
Yep.
They have to work.
Yeah.
Right? So they have to work. I have to be at the closing anyway.
Yeah.
So a lot of times on those deals, I don't even meet my clients.
It's amazing. When I started in this business in the 2000s, there were remote closings were rare and under only when absolutely needed. And it moved and changed, but even up until COVID, it was still like, maybe it was less rare than it was 10 years earlier, but it was still, you saw, again, CRE buyers, investors would tend to not want to be at settlements, but other folks, like people wanted to be, it was just in the vernacular kind of, you just went to settlement, and now it's so much more common for settlements to be done remote. It's, it's a regular course of business,
It is.
Wait, I don't know if there's more remote settlements than there are in-person ones. That's a bold statement. I'm not sure. I have to really, it'd be a really interesting piece of data, and I don't know that we track that necessarily, but I'd love to dig into that.
And I think it depends on the parties, right? Because I think the residential mortgage lenders, they still want that wet ink.
Sure.
In New York anyway.
Yeah,
right?
No, 100%.
You're still sitting down at the table if you're the borrower with the lender signing your loan docs. But like for my developers, Pre-COVID, every closing was in my office. We would have 3 conference rooms going.
Yeah.
We'd allot 2 hours for each, and it was constant, right? Now, my office sends everything out.
Yep.
We do our part remote.
Yeah.
If they want to go meet with their clients, or if the lender wants to meet with the borrower, great. You guys sit wherever you want to sit. You don't have to come to my office.
Yeah.
We'll do everything remote.
I guess I'm thinking that too as a remote closing, meaning yes, lenders, and I'll tell you something funny that I think about that. Lenders still want wet ink. It's so interesting. But for us, the buyer and the seller showing up at the attorney's office or at the title company's office is significantly more rare, or whatever office. It's at 10 o'clock on Tuesday and everybody's there.
Yes.
It's not that it's rare, but it's significantly more rare than it used to be. I think now even, listen, we're sending someone out to, there's one location for the seller and a different location at a different time for the buyer, or 2 locations for the seller because they're not even at the same place.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, which happens. We just got burned on a deal the other day. It fell through because of the inspection that happened the morning of settlement. The seller, they were needing accommodation. We sent a closer out to 2 separate locations. Deal fell through. There was a flood. They walked in the property to inspect it. There was a flood. And the seller said, I'm not doing anything. I'm not giving you any concession, and I'm not putting up any money. Which I guess, listen, if you think about it, they're probably going to get more from their insurance than they were, they waited out. Okay, we'll put it back in the market. All right, I understand that perhaps as a business move. But, meanwhile, we are out money for search and certs and sending 2 human beings to 2 different locations.
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's, approaching $1,000 in hard costs.
Right.
Not to mention human time investment, and it's just gone. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And there's no recouping that.
It's hard to collect it. It's hard to collect it. We try, but it's hard to collect it.
It's hard when a deal doesn't go through to get paid on it.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Agreed.
Most of the time it's difficult. Yeah. And most of the time what I'm describing is a little bit of an exception. It's cost of doing business. That's what it is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And in your business, you don't bill hourly, correct? Or do you?
So we do.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think my competitors do. Well, it depends actually, right? Because I kind of wear 2 hats.
Yeah.
I represent my developers, and we have different arrangements with them, right? Like when you're doing an offering plan, that retainer is different, right? Because you need your fee for the retainer, for the offering plan, and then there's a lot of amendments that go along with that once the plan is accepted for filing by the AG's office. So you have different prices for the different amendments that you have to file.
Right.
And then we will charge hourly for an amendment where we have an offering plan accepted for filing. They're on the market, and then the developer calls and says, you know what? I'm reconfiguring all of this. It's all new architectural drawings. It's all new tax lots. And it's a whole new, you have to basically amend this offering plan. It's really material, and it's a lot of work. We charge hourly for that.
Yeah.
Because that, we feel like that's on our client, right? Like, figure it out ahead of time what you're building and what you're going to sell, so we can put that in the offering plan so that everyone knows, right? So some of that is a little hybrid. It's fixed fees and billable. Contracts closing, depends on the developer and certainly the size of the project, right? You have 5 units versus 400. And on the residential deals, if I'm representing somebody, it's off market and they're buying a $30 million, condo, I'm going to charge hourly.
Right.
And I tend, and knock on wood, I find those are the easier deals to do.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the level of wealth that those people have, and the people on all sides of you. I'm not sure what it is, but those tend to go easier.
That makes sense to me. I think I've found that, crazy as it sounds, but it's $150,000, flip in Jersey or whatever is more complicated. You've got, distress on the seller. You've got financial distress. There's judgments and liens open. There's permits open. Whatever the case may be, it's like riddled with stuff. It tends to be, right? Versus, $30 million condo, you generally will have a buyer and a seller who there's no financial red flags. There's no problems. And it's much easier.
Exactly. I mean, I have a client who's trying to buy a commercial condo. I've been on this deal since September of last year. First, we were going to lease it, so that was spent many months, right? Now he's going to buy it. It's only like 2.6 to buy. It's raw space. He would then build it out for whatever purposes he wants to use it for. And we're still talking about this deal. We haven't even signed the contract yet.
Right.
The building has so many problems, but my client loves this space. He loves the location. I'm like, could you go find something else?
Right.
And he's like, I just love this location. Okay. So it's luxury residential upstairs.
Yeah.
And their TCO expired over a year ago at this point. Those residential units, I think there's like 15 to 20. I did due diligence back in September. So I don't remember all the details, but their residential TCO expired over a year ago, and they need to get a satisfaction from the Office of Environmental Remediation.
Okay.
Long before the developer did this project, they had to disclose whatever it was maybe something in the soil on site. It's not a big deal. You disclose it, and then you do the remediation, and then you build your building, right? But you have to get certain sign-offs.
Right.
And they're missing. And the DOB kept extending that 90-day TCO. And finally they said, enough. It's been like 10 years now. Go get your final C of O, and we're not giving it to you until you get us that satisfaction.
Right.
Well, COVID has happened, right? A lot of those subs who did the work are now out of business because I spoke to the developer.
Yeah.
When I first got involved, I'm like, why is this TCO expired over a year? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And he said, look, now I inherited the project, the guy I spoke to. And he's like, most of these subs are now out of business. I have to go get now new people to recreate the paperwork, look at what was done, right? Recreate it, and then go back to the DOB. And, you know, my client is still like, I'd really like to see that. You know, before I sign up, then I'm going to run my commercial business here.
Right.
Because I said to him, so I think, and I spoke to an architect about this, I think if my client buys this retail unit, he should be able to get his own C of O. It's raw space, the retail space. The commercial unit has no CO on it. Of course, it shouldn't. It's raw space.
Sure.
So he goes in, he should be able to hire his architect, do his plans, get his permits, and be able to get his C of O so then he can open his business, right? Because it stands alone. It has its own ingress and egress. It has its own fire protection. Like, it stands alone. But you just don't know when you're talking about these agencies, right? For all I know, the DOB will turn around and say, no, we're not giving you your TCO until upstairs gets theirs.
Especially after 10 years has been so long, they might want leverage. You know?
Exactly.
Right.
So that deal I've been talking about for quite some time because that building has issues.
Right.
You know, that really are out of everyone's control.
Of course. Yeah.
You know, at this point, it's out of everyone's control.
It's the peril of living on top of each other. You know,
yes.
you don't have to live with each other.
But that's the thing, right? You get these deals, you don't know what you're going to find.
Right.
Each deal is exciting. I love when my clients call and say they're buying in a project that wasn't mine because it's like, oh my God, I get to read, what did this developer build, right? What did he build, you know, and get to see what, you know, someone else is doing and where they're buying. And it's exciting. It's all different.
And to see into your competitors and how they crafted those documents.
Oh,
and
totally.
What they plan to do and
Totally.
what they do that's better or worse or different than you.
I make a lot of notes to show my colleagues, like, how did they get this past the AG's office?
Right.
We never get this through the AG's office, you know. So yes, you make a lot of notes.
And it's interesting that the Attorney General is the one that all this passes through the AG's office. That is not the case in most places.
In most states, okay.
Yeah, it's not the case at all. AG has nothing to do with it in most states and most cities. It's
wow.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's zoning, it's licenses, inspections. It depends on what city you're in or whatever.
Right, or what state. Yeah, I have some of my clients now who've moved down to Florida and they're doing some projects in Florida, but we're not involved. Like, we only do New York.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's different. This business is widely different everywhere you go. Like, every marketplace, certainly every state, but every MSA, you know, there's parts of you know, and it's parts of a city, you know, even that are different, that behave differently. And it's part of its rules and regulations, laws, whatever, but a lot of it's customs. It's just customarily how people do business. I find on the title side of thing, of life, adjacent to what you do in the transactions themselves, and managing transactions, a lot of it's customs. It's people do business differently in different cities, you know?
Yes.
And by the way, New York and I think Texas, the state of Texas, are probably the most different from other places.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But even New York alone is so different, right? So I work in the city. I live in Westchester. We'll handle transactions in Westchester. We'll handle Nassau and Rockland. But then when you start to get up in the like northern New York, like the Albany County area, I'll have friends who say, oh, Tina, we're going to buy up there. And I always say to them, you know what? You'll be doing yourself a service if you get yourself a local attorney because I don't know the customs.
Right.
You know, even the contract is different.
Yeah,
the contract itself is different. I don't know what's customary. And I don't want to go into a location I don't know and start raising issues that are not issues for them. Right? You know, so even Connecticut, my brother bought a house in Connecticut. And I was like, you know what? I have to get you a Connecticut lawyer because it's so different, right?
They've even broken down in our business New York into Zone 1 and Zone 2, which you may be familiar with. Zone 2 is the city, the boroughs in Westchester and Long Island, and Zone 1 is everything else.
Everything else.
Literally, that's what it is. Buffalo.
Right.
I mean, like literally everything else.
Well, we love Buffalo in my house. We're Bills fans.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry then. I'm sorry about this season.
It's all right. It's all right. They're changing their rules again for Josh Allen.
Yeah. They probably belonged in the Super Bowl, but I'm an Eagles fan, so it probably would have made a difference.
So congrats for you guys. Yeah, that was an exciting day for you.
Yeah, it was a great day. It was a great win, a great season. That was probably their day. I have a feeling no matter what, but I'm sorry to all those Giants fans out there that maybe listen.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, it's been great talking to you, great hearing about the business. Anything that I haven't asked you that you want to talk about?
No, I just think, it's an exciting world of real estate. Every transaction is different. You never know where you're going to get. And a lot of it is the people involved. But I mean, I love it. You get to meet so many different people in so many different walks of life, different stages of their lives, right? It's exciting. It's fast-paced. It's exciting.
Yeah. But we talked about the fast-paced part. I think that's what most people, you and I, are probably very attracted to, the fast-paced, the frequency, which we like. But it's a fun business. Thanks for coming aboard. I appreciate it, Tina.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me. Great. I'm thrilled. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
It's been great.
You got it. We'll have you back soon.